Net gain, networking, encouragement, and training. Brought to you by Jack of All People Trades, helping snow and landscape companies recruit, train, and retain the best employees. Welcome to Net Gain. This is Networking, Encouragement, Training. I'm your host, Evan Tashwire from Jack of All People Trades. We help landscape, snow, and service business owners stop losing good employees and build win-win workplaces without all the corporate HR fluff. Net Gain is for landscape, snow, and service business owners who are tired of hiring, training, and losing good people. Each episode, we're going to tackle one or more real people problems and talk about what actually works in the field. So what I'm going to talk about today is a continuation from a prior episode on employee engagement and how you can practically apply it. So want to just jump in with putting some stats out to you. So before we jump into any of the talk, I just want you to dream as a business owner of what this would look like. So what would it look like as a business owner if you could reduce your turnover by 21 to 51%? What would it look like to have 78% less absenteeism? So think of every time people don't show up or call off. If 3 of those 4 times could just be wiped off the board. What about 23% greater profitability? And just so you know, these aren't random numbers. These are actually the median differences between top quartile, so top fourth, top workplaces, and bottom quartile, bottom workplaces, measured by Gallup's Q12 Employee Engagement Survey. And this has been done over decades of research. So long story short, there's a lot of numbers behind it. This isn't random. Too long didn't read of it. This stuff works, so pay attention and implement it. But the manager, this is especially for company owners and leaders, know that you're responsible for up to 70% of the variance in your employees' engagement at work. So I'm going to define that and really talk about that. But leaders, I want you to know it's been actually said that a manager or a leader has a greater effect on an employee's mental health than their therapist does. So that shows you the level of impact that you can have. For anybody watching the video, my dog just joined the podcast here. You got something to say? Nah, he's just hanging out. But I'm going to define what employee engagement is, and then we're going to continue the discussion from the prior podcast. So if you hadn't tuned in, what employee engagement is, it's the emotional commitment or connection that an employee has to the organization, their work, and their colleagues. So it's not just about whether they show up or not, but it's actually how they show up. Do they feel involved and responsible, or are they just going through the motion? So to give you an idea of what engaged employees look like, and when I say this, I think you'll start to see why this is valuable for your business. Engaged employees are psychologically invested in their work. They feel a sense of ownership over their contributions, and they're motivated to go above and beyond for their basic job requirements. So if you think about that, psychologically invested, that means they're really thinking through what they're doing. They're not just doing something and then walking away. So they're not just saying, the grass is cut, on to the next one, but they're really thinking about, hey, this is this customer's lawn, or this is the commercial property that is the street appeal, the curb appeal for this business. If I do this job well and this lawn is well cut and these bushes and trees are well taken care of, then this plaza stands out from the guys down the road and they can really bring good people in. So that's what psychological investment looks like. Or sense of ownership is, you know what, if this doesn't get cleared, if this doesn't get plowed, this area doesn't get taken care of and de-iced, then someone's going to have a slip and fall. I'm responsible for making sure this exit is clear. Not somebody else is, not the team will do it. I'm responsible. So if you want a way to build accountability, employee engagement is a great way to go on that. And motivated to go above and beyond, I think that speaks for itself. But long story short, this is an emotional internal drive, and you need good management, a good management structure, and good leaders to make it work. So if you're wondering, how do I build good leaders? How do I train people? How do I train my leaders? We're so busy. Reach out to me. That's something that Jack of All People Trades that I can do for you, is help you to train and build those leaders. I've built leadership development programs that have seen about half the people in them get promoted within a 2-year period, some multiple times. So that's something we can definitely talk about and make work. So what we're going to talk about here is, number one, a good management structure. So what does that look like? So best practice for a good management structure is you should have 6 to 8, no more than 6 to 8 direct reports reporting to you. And why you need this structure is really for manager-employee one-on-ones. The one-on-one is a big driver of engagement because it's time for you to spend time with the employee, A, to see what's being completed at work, B, see where they're running into bottlenecks and obstacles, and then also to provide any additional help. And this also gives you a time to get to know them, build rapport, see where their career goals are going. All these things set aside whether you're a company they're going to stay with or you're a company that they're going to say, nah, I'm going to move on. So if you say I'm too busy for one on ones, then you're also too busy to keep good people. So that's something you should think about, in the long term. So, what we're going to talk about today with employee engagement, last time I talked about the fundamentals of it. This time we're going to really talk about what do employees need from managers and how can managers, direct supervisors engage individuals. And I'm going to try to give you some practical tips that you can do. So, even if you're a crew leader, you're a foreman, foreperson, you're an office supervisor, operations director, whatever, you can implement some of these. And what I always suggest with training is what is one thing you're going to start, stop, or continue doing based on what you're learning today. So, number one, in what employees need from managers and how you can engage individuals is Gallup measures at work. I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. So, to break down that in layman's terms, people want opportunities to work in their strengths. So, if people are extroverted and like talking to people, they're probably going to want opportunities to work with and talk with people. If people are good in the field, good with certain tools, good with their hands, they're going to want opportunities to work hands on. Some people are going to be better with data and back end administration. They're going to want opportunities to do that. So, a couple ways you can figure out where employees' strengths are is number one, there's several assessments you can invest in, such as the DISC assessment, which shows behavior and communication styles in the workplace. There's also Clifton Strengths, which goes a little deeper on strengths and provides several action items and follow up. So if this is something that you're interested in, I could definitely help you with this. So reach out to me. We can talk about how to get this started. Not only I can help you with ordering the assessments, but actually providing follow up training and coaching to help you get the best out of it and providing some resources to help you implement it on a long term basis as part of what you already do. Because let's face facts, some of you might already be rolling your eyes or thinking, this sounds great, but I don't have time to do all this strength stuff that he's talking about day in and day out. I want to say I understand. And what I want to try to do in my consulting and encourage you to do is think about your workflow, such as the meetings, morning huddles, communication channels, whether it's Teams, Slack, different messaging apps in the field. See how you can use those to deliver training and engage with your team and engage strengths in ways where you're already working. So if you say maybe an assessment's not for me, what you can simply do at your one-on-one is ask employees what energizes them at work. What tasks that you do weekly really kind of make you smile and think, yeah, I really like doing that, or I really feel like I'm in my sweet spot in my zone when I do that. And also at the same time, observe what they're good at. And in this same example, you also want to ask them what kind of deflates you? What are things that you have to do as part of your job or you encounter that really you feel like you're not strong at or deflate you? Now, this doesn't mean you necessarily take that away, but you might find ways to help them use their strengths to offset it, or maybe just coach them in that area a little bit. But the goal is really to find strengths. Research shows that employees thrive much more when they use their strengths as opposed to only harping on and fixing weaknesses. That doesn't mean you should never try to fix weaknesses. That doesn't mean you should ignore them. You can actually use strengths to fix weaknesses, which is its own conversation. But for employee engagement, we want to focus on highlighting and helping employees work on their strengths. So, for example, in the snow industry, if someone's adaptable and they're able to pivot well in a storm, this is somebody you probably want to give some kind of, either lead role to, or maybe they're a site lead where they can make calls if things change on the fly and say, hey, this is what we need to do. Maybe they're a good sidewalk lead that can say, hey, it's coming down over here. We need to pull some people, or reach out to the, crew supervisor and say, we need to make changes. Maybe there's someone that's a good planner that can foresee obstacles. This might be somebody that you want as an operations manager who's involved more on the planning side, or maybe somewhere in the office you include them in your storm planning meetings and say, what are you seeing here? What gaps are you seeing? So that's just some of the ways that you can engage strengths. And again, getting employees to work in their strengths, here's the key takeaway. Getting employees to work in their strengths is going to have them be greater engaged, which ultimately is going to get you better results as a company. Another thing that really motivates people on an individual level is In the last 7 days, I've received recognition and praise for good work. And this number is intentional of 7 days for Gallup because what they say is that, you know, recognition, it's kind of like almost like eating. You need it consistently to energize you. Like, some people say, oh, well, we had an employee appreciation event last year. Why don't they feel appreciated? Recognition, while don't get me wrong, big events like that are great. It's always good to have cookouts, events to get together, and we'll get to that in some of the other employee engagement thing, but that doesn't replace the need for recognition on a consistent basis, especially from a supervisor or leader. So that's really key. Almost think of it as fuel. You think about it with your machines. You wouldn't not fuel up your loader. You wouldn't not fuel up your trucks and go out and work and just be like, oh, well, I gassed them up a month ago. Why do they need it again? Because they burn through it, and they burn through it in things like life happening, challenges have happened since you last recognized them, new obstacles, and they almost need that new strength for that new day. And recognition is that strength. So another mistake I've seen happen is people say, well, their paycheck is their recognition. Wrong. Their paycheck is table stakes for them staying with you and coming on board with you. So what I mean by table stakes is pay needs to be at the right level for that employee according to their standard of living and needs for them to take and stay with the job. But studies have shown just increasing pay exponentially is not going to increase engagement and satisfaction with those pay increases. So not that you shouldn't do pay increases, but pay increases are more to reward good work and keep up with that table stakes and keep up with inflation, but it's not going to be that recognition. And also, if you say, oh, well, their paycheck is their recognition, you miss an opportunity to meet them on an emotional need. And regardless or not, we say we're rational thinkers, but we make a lot of decisions off emotion. You think about it. If you feel good seeing a movie trailer or seeing a TV trailer and you're like, wow, that seems intriguing, you're likely to tune in. If it doesn't hit your emotion in that way, people can give you all the facts about it, whatever, but you're probably not likely to take action on it. And it's the same thing at work. So if you're not recognizing, you're missing the opportunity to meet that emotional need. And recognition is also really tied to accountability because it shows employees that they're on the right track. Because what you recognize, you should be recognizing behaviors you want them to repeat. So if you recognize them, let's say on a landscape job, that, hey, they went the extra mile and they ensured that the job site was extra clean. You saw them walking through, you saw them picking up random trash, you saw them, checking the nooks and crevices, you saw them making sure that nothing was leaking, everything was cleaned up and it had that curb appeal. That's behavior that you want them to replicate, so you should recognize them when you see them doing it. Same thing with snow. If you see somebody going that extra mile of going out and doing that ice check a day later because they're saying, hey, there might be refreeze, that's something you want to recognize because they're doing that behavior of not just saying, hey, I did my job and I'm done, but the mission is to make sure that it's safe, it's black pavement, no ice, no refreeze, no slip and falls, and they're engaging in that. So recognition rewards, that behavior you want and really helps you build accountability. And I encourage you, another mistake I've seen made is not recognizing small wins along the way. So for example, with winter preparation, you don't just want to recognize once you've got all your equipment deployed, all your salt and de-icer deployed, all your employees hired. You want to recognize along the way that's like, hey, I noticed you got that site prepared today. I saw that you were out staking and you got the equipment delivered and the de-icer delivered. That's great. Hey, I saw you have a couple de-icer deliveries set to go out this week. That's great. Thank you for working on that. You're doing a great job. So you want to recognize along the way. Find ways to recognize. A practical way I always like to say, and I don't say this to make it robotic, but I say this to anything that's important should be in your calendar to remind you of. Put a calendar note in your calendar to say, recognize team members or just recognition, whatever really spurs you to it. Because as you have it in your calendar, then you're going to be more likely to do it. So, kind of with that recognition along the way, let's think about a landscape design build. You don't just want to recognize the whole team at the end. Recognize when there's a good client meeting. Let's say they ask good questions on the client meeting, or you feel like they listened well and gave good feedback. Hey, I really appreciate how you listened to that client. You asked really good questions. You made sure you were clear. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for caring about their build. Thank you for going that extra mile to show them you're invested. You want to recognize different milestones along the way in the project. So, bottom line, recognition is like fuel, and you do want to provide it. The next thing up that engages individuals is, according to Gallup, my supervisor or someone at work cares about me as a person. So let's face facts. People are not machines, duh. You know what I mean? But I say that in the fact that a machine generally, unless you really break it, like what you say to a machine is not going to affect how it performs. You can start up a machine and you can be like, oh yeah, you working good today. Or you can be like, ah, you old piece of junk metal. As long as the machine is, tuned up and everything, it's not going to react differently because you talk down to it. But unfortunately, employees, we are emotional beings. We are beings that have, feelings and ways we process things we like and don't like. So you do need to know that somebody cares about you as a person. And again, leaders, company owners, please hear me on this. You have such an impact here. And I want you to think I've seen this mistake, and I'm speaking from the heart. I've seen owners that get so caught in the day to day of what I have to do, and I have to keep the weight of the world on my shoulders to keep this company afloat. If you hire and take care of good people, they will help you do this, but you need to care about your people. If you're using an excuse of I'm so busy to not care about your people, you are making a mistake. And I don't want to see you've worked too hard to make that mistake. And to those that do out there, I just want to give you a thank you on that for caring for your people and talk about why it's important now and how you can do it. If maybe you're like, am I doing this? Because what I really encourage you to do with this episode and all these episodes is use this as kind of like a checklist of, hey, I'm doing this well, I'm not, and maybe take away one thing that you're going to change. So let's get it moving from here. So, people need to know they're not just a number, they're cared about as a person. So, a lot of you companies I know are privately owned. You have a great opportunity that private equity companies or public companies don't have because you're not answering to shareholders, you're not answering to private equity people. You're focused on providing good service and a great environment for your employees. So take advantage of that. Care by getting to know your team members. Ask them in their one on ones or when you talk to them in the field what's important to them, both professionally and personally as they're open to share. Now, some people aren't going to be as open to share. Some people are more introverted, might not share as much. Some people might, share maybe even too much, which it's another discussion. But, people share at different levels, and that's okay. Let them go as they're comfortable. And then a nice thing to do with that is, let's say, for example, you have a teammate, who's on your lawn crew, and she mentions that, yeah, my son's got a baseball game tonight. Next time you see her in the field, hey, how was your son's baseball game? And just spend a couple minutes listening to her about that. Those kind of behaviors consistently go a long way to making sure that people feel seen and cared about. And where we feel seen and cared about, we're more likely to show up and produce results. So, another thing with this is, the way you can do it is think about your one-on-one meetings you have with employees or even your team huddles. You can go around with certain things like icebreakers. So I'm going to share a couple examples for you that you can use these at either one-on-one meetings or team meetings. One I like is called high low. So you say everybody share, and now this is as you feel comfortable. It doesn't have to be the highest high or the lowest low, but share a high point from this last week and a low point. So I might say, for example, a high point for me this week was we got a bunch of new snow team members hired. A low point was, the Steelers lost in the playoff game. This is in January 26th. I'm recording it, and I am a Steelers fan, so I'm sharing that one. So you share those high lows, and then you can even ask, how can we support you in those lows? And you can also celebrate the highs with them too. So a couple other icebreaker examples that I think are good is what was your favorite time at work? What was your best work memory or best accomplishment from this past year? Even personal stuff. What's your favorite travel spot? What's your favorite fall activity? Those little things you get to know about each other stacked up over time really go a long way. So, the last thing we're going to talk about for really engaging the individual is the question Gallup proposes is there's somebody at work who cares about my development. So, in addition to caring about the person, we also want to care about the career and their development at work. So, bottom line, people want to grow. And if you're not comfortable as an owner and a leader with growing and delegating to others and letting them have that opportunity where they may mess up or they may not do it as well as you the first time, or there may be a learning curve, long term, you're going to struggle. So you're either going to struggle long term and consistently, or you struggle in the short term with delegating and training someone else up. But as you do that, they're going to be able to take weight off you, and you're actually going to get stronger as a trainer and a leader in delegating, which is going to benefit you more long term. So you definitely want to delegate, give opportunities to grow. You should have formal training at your company. So there's many ways you can do this. You can either bring in a trainer like myself, either in person or virtually. You can pipe me into a conference room, and I can provide training. You can also, use different learning resources such as, SIMA's resources, various podcasts out there. There's the BR1 podcast, which is also good on the people hiring side. Blizzard and Bloom with Jay Rotinelli, White Gold with Levi Jett, the Snow Jobs podcast, SIMA's podcast. There's Bill Butts and Dave Lammers had the Sales Talk podcast for sales. So there's a lot in the green industry. There's $1 Million Landscaper, Green Industry Grind or Green Grind. I can't remember the name off top, but there's a lot of good podcasts out there synced with Angelique Robb. So this is why I don't like to start mentioning by name, because I always feel like I'm going to forget one. So if I did forget you, not my, forgive my head, not my heart there. But there are a lot of good resources that you can introduce your team to. Snow Business Magazine's another one. So definitely introduce your team to that. Let them do some learning on their time. Even give them a little bit of release time here and there to do some professional development. And I don't mean like hours a day or week. I mean like, can they have 30 minutes every 2 weeks to, work on something? Or can you do an hour training once a month? Think small but consistent increments. Also have development conversations at their one-on-ones, their annual reviews. Ask them, what does a great next year here look like for you? Where do you see yourself in 3 years, 5 years? And then start working with your company. Think about your goals. Is there a win-win way for you to achieve your goals as a company and them to achieve theirs? So for example, if somebody wants to, become an operations manager within 3 years, is there a way, let's say you're trying to grow and you're saying, okay, if I grow, I'm not going to be able to handle this side of the operations. So I am going to need someone under me. So if we achieve this growth, I can create this position and, train this person to go into it. So think about that, because employees want that. That engages them. A good example in snow is give people opportunities after storms to learn either new machines or do parts of the business. Shadowing is really big in snow. I did a little clip on one of my other Net Gain podcasts with Corey Grace where I talked about ride-alongs being really important after a storm. So if you have an opportunity to do a ride-along, as an office team member, I definitely suggest you take that, because that is really going to help your professional development. So next steps when it comes to employee engagement that I suggest is you want to measure it, and you also should create a playbook that you can say, hey, based off this measurement, we're strong here. We could use some help here. The Gallup Q12 is a great tool, and I can help you administer that. And why you want to measure it and get feedback and have follow-up meetings is because that feedback's like playing the game with a cheat code. And I can help you play it. So if you're looking for that kind of help with your organization to measure and increase your engagement, reach out and let's talk. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on Net Gain, definitely subscribe, leave a review with comments, and also pass this along to peers in the industry that can help you, because every little touch point is going to help. So this has been Jack of All People Trades. Again, if you like what you hear, subscribe, leave us that review. And if you need help hiring, training, and retaining your best people, let's talk. Weather, but you ain't gonna slip and fall with that. Why? Cause we snow fighters, we assaulting that. Get it, salting that. King me, this salting rap. Clown brokers, end of the road. This